We finally get an origin for the One Below All in Marvel Comics, and of course we get it in the Incredible Hulk comic, and Phillip Kennedy Johnson does an amazing job with this. So what this does is this initially picks up with a woman named Trudy alongside a handful of what are basically grave robbers showing up in what they believe to be a king's tomb out in Iraq. And of course, as you would expect, their idea here is they can plunder the place, attain all kinds of riches, fence them, and then make a boatload of money. The problem is that when they get in here, what they discover is that it's not really a king's tomb. It's more of a sacrificial place. They don't fully know what people were being sacrificed to, and there is just kind of this gigantic green type statue, but that's it. And so what ends up happening is that Trudy picks up a skull, kind of commenting on the fact that it seemed to belong to a child, and she's immediately possessed. And when that happens, she says, "The green door is shut." Now, those of you guys who are familiar with the One Below All, you know exactly what that means. But if you're not, in Marvel Comics, the One Below All was one of the coolest introductions to the Incredible Hulk mythos in recent years. It was covered in Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk run. We did cover it. You're welcome to check it out, but I'll also post a link on Amazon if you want to buy it. The idea behind this was that in years past, Marvel's explanation of how the Incredible Hulk came into existence was usually offered with things like Bill Mantlo and Peter David's run, where it said that when Bruce Banner was exposed to the Gamma Bomb, the Incredible Hulk was just the physical manifestation of all the torment that he had experienced at the hands of his father, all that abuse from Brian Banner. And different writers have offered different explanations along the way. What Al Ewing did is he said, we have the One Below All, right? The prime creator of all things in existence, leaving out everything that Al Ewing also did when he did Defenders Beyond and created like the Enigma and all that kind of stuff. The bigger part of this is that while we didn't know where the One Below All came from, all we knew is that it was an answer to the question of what happens when the One Above All hulks out. Quite literally. And that what ended up happening here is that the One Below All resides at the deepest layer of existence, so what you and I might call hell, and that the only way to access it is through what are called green doors. That when Bruce Banner was exposed to the Gamma Bomb, he unwittingly was granted a portion of the One Below All's power, hence the reason why you have Immortal Hulk. And so that whenever the Hulk dies, he can pass through a green door and will always come back. And in fact, there was an alternate future where the One Below All possessed Hulk and then eradicated everything in the multiverse. It was a one-shot comic. Yes, we covered it. It's part of the Immortal Hulk playlist. It was pretty dope. And so what goes on here is that with Trudy now possessed, she just kind of like transforms into this gigantic creature and kills everybody. But the whole time she's saying things like, "Thank you for coming here. I am coming, mother, coming to free you and all my brothers and sisters. None now remain with the strength to deny us our kingdom, because the green door is shut." And so seemingly what that indicates is there are no other Hulks out there. There's simply just the one Incredible Hulk. Now again, Phillip Kennedy Johnson is doing a lot of reworking with the Hulk mythos, so some of what we've seen before may remain, and some of it may go away. We'll only find out as time goes on. The other part of this is you do pick up with Bruce Banner, but this whole scenario in the diner is really designed to illustrate and kind of pick up from what we saw with Donny Cates' run on Hulk, which is to say that where Bruce Banner had essentially found a way to lock the Incredible Hulk persona away, he's now lost that ability. And so it's only a matter of time before the Incredible Hulk takes control fully. That the Hulk in the original Donny Cates run saw it as a betrayal. The fact that Bruce Banner had locked him away and denied him the ability to access the world, it was a massive affront. And so now Hulk just wants to take control and be in control forever, is really all that is. And so that's why when Bruce Banner kind of wakes up in the middle of nowhere and the Incredible Hulk is taunting him, it's all for that purpose. We're also introduced to a girl by the name of Charlene. We did talk about her when we covered the whole story where Hulk fights demons later on. We did cover one story arc as part of this. The long and short of it is she comes from a very abusive household and effectively just ran away. The reason why her path and the Hulk's path cross is because there comes a point when Bruce Banner turns into the Incredible Hulk. And with this immense feeling of helplessness that she had always been forced to endure, seeing the Incredible Hulk gave her a feeling of strength, right? The Hulk being strong made her strong. And so, of course, she ended up accosting her father and whatnot and beat him within an inch of his life. But what is important here is that Trudy, who is now possessed, shows up with a couple more individuals. They're also possessed as well. And that's why you hear things where she says, "Follow them, my cunning, clever boy. find the truth of it. And this guy says, yes, eldest, may I keep one? I am so hungry. And she says, look at you, you've not eaten since Viridian. Poor thing. Do as I bid, and then we feed. And so he says, of course, I will do what you ask. So again, these demonic entities are feeding on people. Now, it's an important thing to understand here. When this guy turns into like this crazy monster looking thing, what Phillip Kennedy Johnson is doing is actually building on what Benjamin Percy has been doing in the Ghost Rider comics and the Ghost Rider and Wolverine crossover. Between Benjamin Percy and Phillip Kennedy Johnson, there's been a concerted effort at Marvel to really build up the monster side of things. Now, whether that's because of future plans for the MCU or because the monster side of Marvel has long since been an almost abandoned part of the mythos, I don't have the answer to. I'd like to believe it's the latter answer because honestly, Marvel's whole monster side outside of like Monster Island and Monsters Unleashed has really just been ignored for decades. And so it's dope to see that it's all coming back in a really, really cool way. What matters here is that with Bruce Banner basically cornered by the FBI, engaging in their schemes and so on and so forth, not really Trudy and the possessed people, that's when Charlene sees him transform into the Hulk. And it's a pretty gruesome sight, right? Again, it's Phillip Kennedy Johnson tying back into these horror themes. And so he basically manifests and then, beats the crap out of the FBI agents and is like, leave me alone. And then Charlene tries to follow him. Not only that, after she had beat the crap out of her dad, who had basically chased her down after she went away, one of the demons catches up to him where he's basically unconscious, starts mimicking his voice, and then copies his physical form and kills him. So it's pretty cool in terms of how all this is functioning. Now, of course, this leads to Trudy and her folks catching up to this guy and then saying, okay, you found the Hulk, let's go locate him. And that's really what a lot of this is going to be with regards to her character, trying to track down the Hulk. But there are some important things to understand here. For example, she says, fear has ever been the truest worship. If the vessel wishes to rid of the god flesh that he wears, all the better for us. You served us well, little love, even if there is something of the green door in you. When you were mortal, the Hulk's vessel was your mate. Yes, and this woman says, Bruce Banner, Bruce will never let you have Hulk, and Hulk will kill you if you try. And that's what this woman says his predecessor tried. This one will fare no better. And so in essence, Trudy here is seemingly talking to Betty Ross, right? And the whole idea is that they're trying to get their hands on the Hulk. For what purpose, we don't fully know, at least not yet. We'll find out here in a little bit. But she basically addresses herself as the eldest, and she says, hear me, terrors of earth, all who hide from the sun within shadow and dream, who dwell in cave and river and well and tomb, all who men name monster, any allegiance you once owned is ended. I command you by the will of the once and future ruler of earth, the almighty mother of horrors. So in effect, she summons Man-Thing and the Maloids and Ghost Rider. Now, this is also Phillip Kennedy Johnson building on an existing concept, specifically the idea of the Shadow King. For those of you guys who weren't really reading the X-Men comics, specifically the resurrection of Magneto, you've probably heard of the Shadow King as this kind of multiversal representation of evil. The idea behind what happened there is there's a point in Resurrection of Magneto when Storm confronts the Shadow King, and the Shadow King reveals all these exceedingly villainous people that Storm had faced off over the course of her existence. These godly, powerful forces were all effectively facsimiles of the Shadow King. And so that's kind of what Phillip Kennedy Johnson is doing here, that the Man-Thing and the Maloids and all these guys, beings who dwell in the shadows, they're not really these like disconnected individuals who exist out there and do their own thing. They are all in some capacity the product of the mother of horrors. Now, how far reaching that goes, we don't know. And so at the end of all this, Charlene actually catches up with Bruce Banner. But again, she wants to join him. She wants to be a part of everything that he has going on. And she even tells him, right, like we mentioned earlier, that seeing the Hulk makes her feel empowered and makes her feel more capable. And she's always felt helpless for most of her life. She even goes so far as to make like a sidekick pitch, right, where she's like, well, I mean, Captain America had Bucky, so, you should definitely allow me to be your sidekick. I mean, eventually I'll go on and do my own thing, but until then, we can hang out. And she says, like, the Incredible Hulk's an Avenger, right? So Avengers have sidekicks. And for the most part, Banner rejects her, right? He's like, look, I mean, I don't want to have any sidekicks. I don't want to have anything to do with any of this stuff. And he tells her, like, go home. right? Like, you do not want to be involved with the Incredible Hulk. It's a lot more dangerous than you think. But in the midst of all of this, they're suddenly met by the arrival of just a dead guy walking along a path. He doesn't really attack them, and where the question is asked by Bruce, like, what brings you out this way? He simply just says, going home to Red Creek, going to see Sister Sadie and Brother Deep. Brother Deep's calling us home. Now, as you notice, Bruce Banner doesn't really freak out here. He doesn't really panic or anything like that. And a lot of it's because when you're Bruce Banner and the Incredible Hulk, you've seen and done a lot over the course of your existence. There's so many things that have happened over the course of your life. So everything from monsters, demons, gods, and demigods, alternate realities, the Hulk has seen it all. So just like an undead dude walking across the road isn't really that much of a shock to someone like Banner and Hulk. But it also speaks to this really cool side of the Hulk mythos that you never get to see, which is that he's aware that things like that happen all the time in the Marvel Universe. It's one of the coolest things about the Ghost Rider comics. That whole idea of the undead and monsters and demons and stuff like that, that's happening all the time. And if you don't read Ghost Rider, you wouldn't know that, but it's one of the coolest things that goes on. And so what ends up happening is that Charlene and Bruce Banner are met by a cop who's just kind of traveling along, and he actually invites them back to a warm bed and a place to stay, because they initially pitched the idea that, hey, like, you know, we're just friends and our car broke down and that sort of thing. But this guy's clearly pretty shady, right? And so ultimately, because the Incredible Hulk persona simply won't manifest, Bruce and Charlene go along. And this guy even says, Red Creek, that's where I'm going, right? The place I was born and raised, good, God-fearing people there. And so that's when you pick up with Sister Sadie. And the reality here is it's not an overly significant moment, but it is one of the coolest, because Sister Sadie is giving this kind of sermon, right, to all the followers. She's an undead person who's resurrected here. She says, the days finally come that we always sung and prayed for, our day of resurrection, hallelujah. And she says, when I was little and Daddy was off to work, he'd kiss me on the forehead and say that he was going to see old Brother Deep. Y'all remember those days when the coal flowed down the mountain like wine, food on every table? The blessings of Brother Deep were brought dear sometimes. Some folks we lost in cave-ins, others in a sick bed, but hallelujah, Brother Deep's blessings always came home. The natives who lived here before us were diggers too. They had their own stories about our mountain, about a god so cruel and strong, his brother gods took his wings, cast him to earth, and trapped him in stone. Now, those of you guys who are familiar with the Marvel history, you guys already know what Sister Sadie's talking about, but if you don't, I'll talk about it here in a second. She says, some said that old dead god called to him in their dreams, calling him into the caves to set him free. They dug till their tools broke and their fingers bled and their backs gave out, trying with all their might to quiet the voice that drove them there. They're all gone now, poor heathen devils. If only they'd Brother Deep to give them the true gospel. And she says, Brother Deep's been resurrected, brothers and sisters, by one of his own, one named Eldest, and us along with him to serve him. But this day of resurrection is not just ours. It belongs to the enemy as well. Brother Deep's enemy is born again from his green door, and he walks among us. And to send him back to perdition, we are called upon to do what we always done. We're called upon to dig, to free Brother Deep and bring him into his kingdom, that he may smite down the enemy and rule on high as in the time before man. Brother Deep's telling me someone new has joined us. Brother William, who have you got with you? And he says, new friends, Sister Sadie, raised outside the light of Brother Deep, but good folks. And she says, well, that's fine. Did you bring them to join our fellowship? And he says, sister, I brung them for the blessing. They're going to be sacrifices. And so at that point, Bruce Banner starts calling out to the Hulk. And it's like, Hulk, you got to do something. Like, you have to do a thing. Like, they're gonna kill the girl. And the response of the Hulk, yeah, but they're gonna kill you first, because the Hulk wants Banner dead before anything. He doesn't care about anything else. And it actually happens. They plunge a knife into his chest and take him out. And Sister Sadie says, praise him, praise be to Brother Deep. But then Banner starts to bleed, and the blood starts to turn green, and all hell breaks loose, because Sister Sadie says it's him, it's the fractured son. Now, something that we need to draw attention to, and Phillip Kennedy Johnson's got balls for doing it, the Incredible Hulk starts killing people in a house of worship. And I've never seen the like hell's bells, right? Killing people in a church. That is crazy. But it's the Incredible Hulk doing what the Incredible Hulk does. And so he literally starts tearing all these guys apart because the Incredible Hulk doesn't really differentiate. All the Hulk sees is an enemy to defeat, an enemy to destroy. That's it. And in fact, he actually saves Charlene a couple times. The fight's not very lengthy. It's pretty small as you would expect it to be, right? Just these kind of weak undead folks. But then again, when the Incredible Hulk starts to walk away, Charlene tells him, take me with you, right? And he says, you're Banner's friend. And she says, no, right? Banner tried to send me away, but I saw you change. I want to be like you. Can you make me strong? And he says, no, you're weak, afraid, and puny, just like him. And in a lot of ways, that's true. While Charlene does have some strong convictions, the reality is that her desire to escape her life is rooted in fear. She's terrified of her life, and she's terrified of the world. So she's not facing the Incredible Hulk and any of these threats out of courage. She's facing it out of cowardice because her back's against the wall and she doesn't know what else to do. It is a very thin line between these things, but the distinction is also significant for someone like the Hulk, charging into battle versus wandering into a battle terrified the whole time. And so she says, like, I've been following you for days with Banner trying to send me home every 2 seconds. And now you're going to ditch me too because I got scared when a bunch of church zombies tried to drag me to hell. Well, screw you. Just because I'm not some stupid green 800-pound jerk does not make me weak. But then the building starts to rumble behind her. And then that weakness rears itself, and you see just how terrified she is. Not only that, a hole opens up, and literally she goes falling into it, and the Hulk follows her in and then rescues her. And that's when you see that at the bottom of this hole is this giant cave that people have been digging in for seemingly hundreds, if not potentially thousands of years. And that's when you start to get into everything that's going on. So what I will do here is I'll show you what Phillip Kennedy Johnson is talking about, but he also provided like this kind of one page at the end that gives a description of kind of what's happening behind the scenes that led to all of this. So what he establishes here is he says, from the one below all sprang all creation, and all things within it were made and governed by his will. So again, ignoring the whole idea of the enigma and all that kind of stuff. And he says, save the single spark of life that sprang from no creator, only from itself, the mother of horrors. In that time, all things by their nature serve the will of the one above all, and saw in him a divine benefactor. But the mother of horrors rightly saw in him a tyrant, unneeded and unwelcome, one who held creation in his thrall. She judged the one above all had known dominion enough, and swore he would not rule the earth, to which she was bound, and that earth would be a place of deviance, of divergence, of demiurgic fires, and primordial energies. Earth was hers, and none but she and her children would decide its fate. Now, this is a very important distinction here, because what Phillip Kennedy Johnson is establishing and really kind of building into is the idea of the Elder Gods. In Marvel Comics, we never got a true origin of the Elder Gods per se. I mean, we kind of did, right, with the idea that they were like some of the earliest creations, but we never really got much in the way of an explanation as to why it was that Earth had Elder Gods like Chthon and Sidorak and all these different guys, whereas other planets, like the Shi'ar throne world, for example, just had Shara and Kithri and nobody else. And so this is the answer to that question, that only Earth itself would be home to the traditional Elder Gods that we know. It's a phenomenal way to answer that question. It also explains why the Elder Gods devolved into degeneracy, why Chthon became the most powerful of them alongside Set, the serpent god, and between the two of them were two of the most powerful Elder Gods to ever exist. It also explains the idea of Gaia giving birth to a tomb, consuming all the various Elder Gods, leading to their destruction, and then taking off to live in the sun, as crazy as that might sound. But it's kind of like this whole back-end explanation of where Elder Gods came from and why they're not seen anywhere else in Marvel. And so he continues on and he says, and so, though the one above all ruled over all creation, the mother of horrors hid from him the earth and filled it with life that defied his will, life both profane and wondrous. Though the one above all knew nothing of her, Still, Mother hated him, and her mind dwelled ever upon him. And so Mother created a being in mockery of the One, even brighter and more beautiful than he. She gave him many hands with which to build, many eyes with which to see, broad wings of burnished gold, and a voice like sacred music. She clothed him in gleaming golden mail that shone more brightly than any star, brighter than even the One above all. She named her son Udru, which means brighter than he. At last, the time came when the One above all did discover the earth, finding it a vulgar, savage place of violence and chaos, devoid of all order. Here, his order had been corrupted by some mysterious force, one he did not create nor intend. And when his eyes fell upon bright Udru, he knew Udru at once for what he was, a mockery, an affront, a challenge to his authority and supremacy. Though the One above all's only weapon was love, now his heart burned with the green flame of rage. He broke Udru's many hands, struck the light from his many eyes, burned away his golden scales, ripped the wings from his back, and cast him down to earth, blind, burning, and screaming. In the place where Udru's body fell, the earth split apart, and the ground rose up around him. Thus was formed the mountain tomb of Udru, where he would lay burning forever. Eons passed. Earth saw the birth of man, the coming of the Inhumans, and the Vodani, the emergence of the fractured sun, and at last, the binding of the mother of horrors. Men settled upon Udru's mountain and made it their home. And all the while, Udru lay deep below, clawing and screaming, burning endlessly, yearning for freedom from his torment and for revenge on the One above all. As Udru's body burned, the fumes of his flesh seeped through the soil and onto the winds above, poisoning the minds and bodies of the men of the mountain. The fumes carried the will of Udru upon them, and in time, the mountain dwellers were consumed with it, becoming one with Udru, hearing only his tormented song and the command within it. Dig. Dig the mountain dwellers did, and for generations they dug first with tools, then with stones, and at last with their hands, until their wrists were stumps and their backs were broken, and their brains bled from their ears from the unceasing wailing of Udru. The mightiest of them dug on even then, digging until their bodies were burned to ash and bone by the heat of the smoldering ruin of Udru. And even when all were dead and the mines lay still, the will of Udru lay dormant within the bones of the men of the mountain, waiting to be awakened by the One who loved him. I, eldest, firstborn daughter of the mother of horrors. So it's a really, really cool mythos, as lengthy as that is. It's one of the coolest things, because when Hulk and Charlene get down here, the mountain starts to rumble, it starts to shake, and Udru emerges. This just colossal being. Now, by and large, it's one of the coolest aspects here. 9 times out of 10, when you see elder gods, they look very humanoid in nature, leaving out some of the more extreme examples. Somebody like Sidorak, for example, that has humanoid features, but is clearly more demonic than anything else. But even people like Sidorak do have these demonic physical forms. They just normally show up as humans in order to trick people. But one of the things that goes on is that Hulk overpowers this guy quite readily. Now, on the surface, had we never gotten the Immortal Hulk of Al Ewing, it would have been like, well, this is outrageous, right? The idea of the Incredible Hulk successfully killing an Elder God, that's nonsense. But keep in mind here, the Incredible Hulk is powered by the One below all, the antithesis of the One above all. Now, it only really seems to reside in physical strength and immortality. So, of course, no reality warping powers or anything crazy like that. But it does explain the unlimited strength of the Hulk, why he's always had it. And so, quite literally, this guy kills Udru seemingly in one fell swoop. Like, literally destroys this dude's eyes, grabs a giant metal shard, and then stabs him in the head with it. It happens so fast, but it's so incredibly dope. The idea of Immortal Hulk killing elder gods, it's something that never occurred to me before, but it's phenomenal to see. And so with this dude's body just laying in ruin, the Hulk just starts punching a hole through the mountain and eventually makes an exit for himself and Charlene. And then the Hulk intends to continue on and do his own thing. But that's where this cop that initially picked him up kind of shows up and tries to drag Charlene back to hell, and she just like stomps his head in, right? Like, should have stayed in your stupid hole, kind of mirroring what the Incredible Hulk had said previously in fighting Udru. And at that point, the Hulk actually takes a liking to her and is like, okay, cool. I like the cut of your jib. You're welcome to hang out with me. We can travel together. But if you do anything to make Banner's life easier, we're done. And in fact, the Hulk might even just kill her. So with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. Yes, Phillip Kennedy Johnson is rebuilding the Elder God and the godly pantheon mythos within the Incredible Hulk story. And I am here for it. Thank you guys for watching. I will catch you all later. Peace.